We're at the beginning of August 2023. A few months ago, the multi-platform transmedia Doctor Who 60th anniversary event Doomsday was announced, and would you believe that currently, at time of doing this live stream, Doomsday is 10 hours complete. We are nearing the halfway point of the Doomsday event, and considering the fact that hardly anyone is talking about it, I feel like I'm the only one. It is my moral duty, my obligation to cover Doomsday, no matter what the chat may say. So, this has obviously had a pretty negative reception, but it's exclusively made up of people who do not like Doomsday, but have not watched or read any of Doomsday. You go onto the Doctor Who Twitter account, and every so often, whenever a new thing drops on Doomsday, they drop a little video with Suze Kempner in a little green screen studio with her props.
15 hours and... Wait, is that a robot dog?
However, these trailers just end up being an excuse for Tharies to ratio the official Doctor Who Twitter account. Basically, people are not happy with the marketing of Doomsday and know nothing about the subjective quality of the actual stories themselves. It just shows what a single bad trailer can do, or at least the extent of, we really want to hate something, you've given us an inch, we're going to take a mile. Which is a bit disappointing, because I have currently, at time of this live stream, consumed everything Doomsday related. You go on the official Doctor Who YouTube channel, and they've got a very easy timeline to follow. We've got Hour 1, Target Selected, A Doctor in the House Part 1 and Part 2, AI Am the Doctor. These are all of the events which have currently finished when it comes to Doomsday, and we're going to go over these things. So firstly, Hour 1 is the first hour of Doomsday, written by James Goss, and it's basically just a bit of prose that's on the official Doctor Who website. You can read the full thing here on the website, and you know what? This is funny. This is a really funny, really witty bit of writing. You can read it in about 10-15 minutes, and it's how Doom gets into this situation. She's gone to this really posh Venice event to assassinate somebody. Basically, Doom, played here by Suze Kempner, is an assassin of the Lesser Order of Oberon. That's a Revelation of the Daleks reference from the 1980s. And she's assigned different targets that she has to assassinate. And she gets one of these every single hour, and then she uses a vortex manipulator to travel where her assignment is and then complete the mission within an hour. If she doesn't complete it, she doesn't get paid. She is doing a mission in Venice. A Time Lord known as the Doctor, definitely a man, so we know it's not the 13th Doctor, tries to stop her from killing this target. She rebukes him, kills the target, something goes wrong, and now the embodiment of death is going to be chasing her across time and space. She communicates with the Lesser Order of Oberon's secretary, called Terry, who is the most funny character I've ever heard written in a piece of prose on the Doctor Who website. James Goss went really, really hard with this, and I really respect him for that. And Terry is going to send Doom a new assignment every hour, and she's got 24 hours, 24 missions, 24 chances to find the Doctor. So that's Hour 1. That's the inciting incident, and you can read that for free on the Doctor Who website. Next up, we've got Target Selected, which you can get if you own Doctor Who magazine 592. Take that. I picked this up because you could get a physical copy of Doomsday Target Selected. So 4 stories across 4 hours, written by Jacqueline Rayner. However, there's not a lot here. For example, the first hour is when Doom meets River Song in a prison cell. Page 1, page 2, bam, we're off to Hour 2, the plastic population. And she meets a doctor there, but probably not the one you were expecting.
Even more of me!
That clip never gets boring. She meets the 6th Doctor, faces off against the Autons, then goes to another location, which is a western town that's been taken over by Cybermen, uses a plastic gun that she got from the Autons to fend them off, and then she goes to another place to prove that unicorns are real, and that is 4 hours of Doomsday. Very short, very bite-sized, and honestly, the plots are so short, they go by so quickly, that it's hard to get invested into any of the settings, and it's just like, okay, we've got like 10 pages that we're putting at the end of Doctor Who magazine, and that's kind of it. Next up, afterwards, we've got A Doctor in the House, Part 1 and Part 2, which is written by Jodie Hauser, who is the 13th Doctor go-to author for the Titan Comics range. Now, I think that something has gone quite wrong with this release. Firstly, I do have, because I'm stupid, I have both copies, and like I've got both of the variant covers for this issue. Now, issue 2 was supposed to come out last week. You could pre-order it online, physical copies. However, the release date went by, nothing came out. Turns out they pushed the release date back a couple of days. So I went back a few days later, and you can now no longer order A Doctor in the House Part 2 in terms of physical copies online, and they're not shipping anything. Even though it was meant to have come out about a week and a half ago, I have not received my copy of A Doctor in the House Part 2, even though I pre-ordered it. So I was able to get a digital version, which is how I read the comic. But basically, A Doctor in the House Part 1 and Part 2 is 4 hours in Doom's day, and Doom meets Missy, who is currently going through her I'm going to pretend to be the Doctor arc, and she's wearing a Mad Hatter-inspired costume, and she's trying to get her hands on a genocidal weapon at a ball, which is trying to be thieved at by a couple of literal cat burglars, who are also Doom's target. Then, Doom goes to Stormcage, and it turns out canonically that Missy, under the guise of the Doctor, visits Stormcage in order to make puppy dog eyes at River Song. Make of those lesbian implications whatever the hell you will. And then in the second issue, which, like I said, I was only able to get the digital version of, Missy and Doom butt heads with each other to try and get their hands on this Doomsday weapon, and Missy has to try and convince Doom that she actually is the Doctor without resorting to violence or blood or genocide, which is something that she can't possibly do. Honestly, the actual story itself is a bit bleh, but the artwork is terrific. Missy in the Mad Hatter garb is iconic and brilliant, and you can absolutely hear Michelle Gomez's Scottish inflections in the dialogue. The dialogue is terrific. It's really well written. Missy's a lot of fun. I had a big smile on my face from page 1 to the end. And there's also a little Doctor cameo, 12th Doctor Peter Capaldi cameo. We don't quite know which incarnation of the Doctor that Doom is trying to meet. We know it's not 6. We know it's not 13. It could be another one. We don't know yet. It could be 12. Who knows? And then they shadow dropped this. We have this trailer that we looked at earlier in terms of Doom with the robot dog.
Wait, is that a robot dog?
Because it turns out that the next event is in the Doctor Who Lost in Time mobile idle game called I Am the Doctor. Basically, the Lost in Time Doctor Who idle mobile game has a series of events which take place 2 or 3 times a week. One of these was a 4-day event called Doomsday Part 1, where you can unlock Chameleon, who is an epic character. You can purchase and unlock and upgrade characters in order to boost the amount of resources that you can get from certain sites, one of which was Chameleon, which was kind of a spoiler for this event, unfortunately. Doom is summoned to Calculon, where the 13th Doctor and K9 are hiding out, but surprise, it's not actually the 13th Doctor, it is Chameleon. I hope my appearance isn't unnerving to you. It absolutely is. It's a bit of a dead-eyed stare, but with a slight smile, so it doesn't look absolutely, the worst thing ever. Doom is not a character that you can properly unlock in the game itself, but you could get Doom in the event. I've got it here. Haha. And you can, she's able to boost the amount of time that it takes for your locations to unlock resources. There we go. Boosting the time. Look at that go. So yeah, you've got this group of scavengers which are besieging this base on Calculon, which is a safe haven for robots. K9 and Chameleon are hauled up there. Chameleon pretends to be the Doctor to scare away these scavengers, and Doom has to help protect Calculon. And that's the event of I Am the Doctor. It was a 1-hour event in terms of Doomsday. We are 10 hours into the event. Next up in terms of the Doomsday event is Extraction Point. This comes out in a couple of days. This is a novel where Doom meets the 2nd and the 9th Doctors, as well as the Slitheen. This is written by M.G. Harris, and this takes place over the course of 4 or 5 hours of Doomsday. Then we've got another Lost in Time event. This website is very, very handy, by the way. Then we've got some BBC audios for From Doomsday. Then we've got Dying Hours, and then Out of Time, which is another website exclusive. Big Finish released the details for their release. Prepare to Meet Thy Doom. Suze Kempner makes her Big Finish debut in 4 full cast audio adventures as part of the multi-Doctor, as part of the multi-platform Doctor Who story Doomsday, Dying Hours, where she'll meet the 8th Doctor and Charlie. Jackie Tyler, this Mission to the Unknown character, whose name I don't know. The Silence, as she's trying to outrun death. And we talked about this earlier on stream. Space Corset and a Delirious Smile, because this takes place, 17 or 18 hours into Doomsday, and we're 10 hours in right now, and she hasn't stopped and she hasn't slept. So this is clearly a smile of just pure delirium. We've got 4 stories: Dawn of an Everlasting Peace by Jacqueline Rayner, A Date with Destiny by Robert Valentine, The Howling Wolves of Sand Pier by Simon Clarke, and The Crowd by Lizzie Hopley. You can pre-order this on the Big Finish website. This comes out in September. This, I believe, that is the penultimate event for Doomsday before we get to Doom's final hour. What do I think so far? I think the reason there's been so little fanfare is because these are the nichest of niche of expanded material. When you talk about bigger expanded material, you talk about minisodes that you can see on like the Doctor Who YouTube channel, like the collection box set trailers and stuff. Or you talk novels, or you talk Big Finish. For example, BBC Audio frequently release Doctor Who audio dramas published through Penguin, but hardly anyone ever talks about them because they're not Big Finish, and also they're quite expensive for what you get as well. This is a Doctor Who website text, this is Doctor Who magazine comics, and these are Titan comics, which have their own little niche, but they're not strictly Doctor Who stories. They're Missy and Doom stories, so I can understand why people aren't really talking about them. And then you've got Lost in Time, which is an idle game. It's not really known for its storytelling potential here. And also, the static cutscenes and such. And it was fun that she's crossing over with all of these characters that you wouldn't really expect. K9, Chameleon, Missy, the Sixth Doctor, Autons, Cybermen, etc. It is a bit of a who's who in terms of like the 60th anniversary transmedia celebration that is not revolving around the Doctor. And you know what? Doom as a character is pretty fun and endearing. I don't quite know how they're going to balance the whole, we are played by a quirky comedian, but we're also meant to be the universe's greatest assassin. I don't know how that's going to pass out. We won't really properly know, at least until we get to like 4 from Doomsday or Dying Hours, which I believe Suze Kempner is voicing in both of them. We don't know too much about 4 from Doomsday yet, but that's going to be coming out through BBC Audio soon. But either way, Doomsday, I'm enjoying it so far, but I can understand completely why there is like no buzz and like no one's talking about it. Maybe when we get to the end of it, when we get to like the Big Finish release and all 24 hours are collated together, maybe you'll have a compelling story by it. Right now, it's basically just a hodgepodge and a who's who of the Doctor Who universe. And currently, for me at least, that's enough. It's fun. There's some great dialogue, even if the stories themselves are going by at such a clip that you can't really engage with the worlds that she's visiting or the supporting characters who she's briefly encountering unless they're established in like the Doctor Who universe prior. For example, I cannot tell you who any of the characters were in A Doctor in the House, but the Missy and Doom dynamic was a lot of fun to read. I think that Jodie Houser did a terrific job with the dialogue. The dialogue is the king here. The artwork is pretty solid as well. When we start getting to the longer stories, like Extraction Point and these audio dramas, which I presume are going to be taking place more or less in real time, because they're going to be an hour in Doomsday. When we get to that, that's going to be the key to whether or not this event works. Right now, it's going by too quickly. And like I said, they botched the release of A Doctor in the House Part 2. If you wanted to get a physical copy of these prints, basically, unless you get it digitally, you are currently not able to read A Doctor in the House Part 2, which is very strange. I think the character design of Doom isn't interesting. It seems like one of those CBBC Blue Peter competition designed by kids. I think the actual design itself is fine. Like, you look at this is fine. This digital artwork here. This is a cool design. It's just that we first met Doom in a poorly CGI'd green screen trailer with off lighting that did not do very good for the costume. I think the design itself is fine. It's clearly versatile. It looks good in these illustrations. It looks good on Suze Kempner, and it looks good when it's cartoon Lost in Time-ified. This is fine. And look, she's having fun. She's having such a fun time, and she's dying. I will say, it is significantly easier to follow than Time Lord Victorious, because this is just a chronological timeline. Across 24 hours, the hours are very easily laid out, and these are also being released in chronological order, unless you wanted a hard copy of A Doctor in the House, but I repeat myself. Whereas Time Lord Victorious was a multi-Doctor, multi-platform event, which had the 4th Doctor, the 8th, 9th, 10th, and 13th Doctor were involved as well. And Brian the Ood and the Daleks had their own faction as well. It was more like a spider's web, which converged in the middle for those 2 novels. Basically, for Time Lord Victorious, you could just read those 2 novels, and you've more or less got the story. You're just missing a lot of context. But that's generally fine. That's a kind of an easier sell in terms of the commitment and the time and the price tag, whereas Doomsday, if you want the full story, you've got a lot to engage with. Thankfully, a lot of that is free. Like, you get this with Doctor Who magazine. These comics are pretty cheap. Hour 1 and Out of Time are free on the website, and I'm sure that people like myself and others are going to be archiving the cutscenes from the Lost in Time games, so you can keep on top of that. But yeah, in terms of just a walking tour of the Doctor's Rose Gallery and companions and stuff, it's doing the job okay. Whether or not it will amount to anything more than that, it's too early to tell, but we are 10 hours into a 24-hour event. Some of the longest and more ambitious stories in this event are yet to be released. We'll see how this goes. I'm hopeful, and I'll talk about this more as we go along with it. Out of Time, Doom's Final Hour, is scheduled to drop on TBC. We don't know yet. Basically, September, October time is when this event is going to culminate and is going to finish. So give it a month, 2 months time, we'll know whether or not Doomsday was a journey worth undertaking. I think Time Lord Victorious was more accepted by fans too, since it was more focused on Doctors. It was more accepted by fans because, yes, it was more focused on the Doctors, but also it had a much better introductory trailer. That first trailer, I think, has soured a lot of people, and now they just see a target for scorn and ridicule without actually engaging with anything with it. Like, I'm not saying that Tharies is ratioing the Doctor Who Twitter account for clout or anything. I think Tharies just sees a very easy target for ratioing, especially because Tharies, he has Twitter Blue, so he does get pushed up in the algorithm and stuff. I'm seeing his tweets way more now. I'm not saying that I was avoiding him or anything, but I'm seeing Tharies' tweets way more on my timeline because he's got Twitter Blue. It's a little bit skewed there, but anyway. The event currently is fine. It's just like, it's sprinting along through characters and settings right now to a little bit of its detriment, but once it slows down with the book and the audio dramas, that's going to be like the clincher here for me at least.